on, but lots of news around today, most notably with Michael Maguire. Speculation around him being the new State of Origin coach, the speculation that he's agreed in principle. What's the latest you're hearing about that?
Yeah, Jimmy, it's beyond speculation. I can confirm he's got the gig. He will be the New South Wales Origin coach, replacing Brad Fittler after 6 seasons at the helm. You remember that when Brad Fittler was interviewed the last time when he got the job, that Michael Maguire was as well, and he's thrown his hat into the ring, and he will be Brad Fittler's replacement. And I think it's a good move. Like, clearly his work with the Kiwi side shows that he can handle a short preparation. He's still very much got his tentacles and finger on the pulse with club football, with his role as an assistant to Ricky Stewart at Canberra. And I think that, he'll be able to juggle both those roles, both the Kiwis and the New South Wales role, particularly now given that the New South Wales job, it's not a 12-month job as it was when Brad Fittler last held it. It's a part-time job. The focus will be very much on the football program and putting the side together and preparing them. So it's a new era, and Michael Maguire will be at the helm of it.
Okay, interesting. Any understanding around who might be part of the Michael Maguire ticket? I've talked about a Laurie Daly being involved, Matty Johns, John Cartwright's names popped up. Do you get any sense about who Michael Maguire might want on his team?
I think that's all being put together as we speak, and it
Right.
will depend on the commitments of some of the people that you've mentioned. I have heard a few of those names. Potentially Laurie Daly, potentially Matty Johns, maybe even a Steve Price.
Yes.
Look, I think he's going to have a very good team around him. That's all being sort of finalised as we speak, and the term and a few other things that they're just dotting I's and crossing T's. But certainly he wants the job. They want him to do it. So I expect an official announcement at some point later in the day.
And just to confirm, you think that it's feasible? I've already had my say on this, but feasible for him to do the New South Wales State of Origin job, the New Zealand international job, and be a senior NRL consultant at the Canberra Raiders?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Wayne Bennett in the past has held 3 roles at the same time. It's not unprecedented. If it was a full-time job, Jimmy, the New South Wales job, I'd be reticent. But given that that's now a much smaller commitment, most of the Kiwi international commitments for him will be at the end of the year, so they won't clash. And I think it's really important that he is plugged in with club football as well. I think that's a big advantage. And we saw, obviously, Ivan Cleary was lent on quite heavily on game day. Madge is obviously still at the coalface with what he does with Ricky and the Raiders. So, yeah, I don't see any conflict. I think it's a good appointment.
1-year deal seemed to be a sticking point for Brad Fittler. That is no problem for Michael Maguire?
Again, Jimmy, that sort of level of detail I'm not across. That's all being worked out as we speak.
Right.
But he's clearly going to be comfortable with whatever tenure that they've come to terms with.
Let's get into this missile. David Riccio reporting that Michael Maguire has verbally agreed to the Blues coaching job for 2024. So that's in the Daily Telegraph, which I think is a terrific signing. And if I'm the New South Wales board, I know you're part of Australia, but you'd be cheering on the Kiwis to do well, wouldn't you, to validate your decision?
Yeah, you would be. You would be. Can he do both?
Can Madge Maguire do both?
Sorry, can he do all 3? Raiders assistant, New South Wales. You think Raiders assistant gone?
I think absolutely he can do New Zealand. I think he can do New Zealand, New South Wales, New Orleans Saints, New England Patriots, and coach at Newington High School. He could do the lot. I think he could do New South Wales and New Zealand.
Yeah.
What's the difference between a club coach doing their team and a state role, for example? I think he can absolutely do it. We're going to catch up with Tony Kemp later on. I don't think he's totally happy with how this is playing out. For Madge Maguire, you know what? This is the irony in all of this, that your last big job, like think about the food chain, your last big job is getting hooked by the West Tigers.
Yeah.
And your next job is the coach head job or chief job.
Yeah,
is
it's the day for it.
It's the day for it. Is the New South Wales coach.
Yeah.
That is a seismic shift, isn't it?
It is. Oh, you know what? I think he's somewhat perfect for the role. They say he's intense and, over the course of a season it becomes a bit too much. But for a condensed period of time, that might be perfect.
Yep.
And we've tried that laissez-faire style of leadership over the past six series and had mixed results, most recently poor results. So maybe it's time now for the iron fist to crack down and whip these boys into shape.
John Cartwright will be part of the staff as well, is my understanding. So I like that as well, and particularly on the back of what he's coached a lot of games in first grade, and he's obviously part of Kevy's, and I understand played a major role in that as well, Johnny Cartwright. So I don't really have any.
I can't remember for any Michael Maguire coach teams, and I'm sure the listeners will text some through, but any big selection blunders or anything when he was at Souths or West, like I guess Souths kind of picked themselves at that time. But that's the big thing that I expect from the New South Wales coaches, to pick the team that can do the job. No bias towards club sides, no funky selections like Damien Cook at centre, just straight up and down, solid side that can win the series.
I wonder how much incumbency is going to play a factor in his first team.
Done.
Because there's been a few positions been up for grabs, I guess. If there wasn't that incumbency, there's a lot of fullbacks, the halves. This is a really interesting period for New South Wales.
I think
we could see a totally different team.
Out the window.
Okay, is there a Raider bolter just by way of being down there and being, so close to those Raiders players? Is that just a natural thing to sort of look at?
Oh, well, you Hudson Young, who was there last year. I thought he was a bolter that he got in last year, but he'll probably retain his spot, you'd say. That's about it.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Okay. So there you go. Just on the appointment. So the appointment is a 12-month, what's expected to be a 12-month part-time contract, similar to what was offered to Brad Fittler. Now, okay. So if you take all the promotion and all that side out of it, which you could consider to be a different separate role, do you believe, do you actually, when you boil it down, it is actually 3 games?
Yeah. I think the role should start round 1 of the NRL season, because that's when you need to be focused in watching every New South Wales player every game. And it should end after the end of game 3.
Yeah.
Back half of the year, rat's ass as the New South Wales coach.
Correct.
Because half those players may get injured. They may not be playing as well again at the start of the next season. So it's really round 1 to end of game 3.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. If you can't form a game plan and pick up every tidbit through the opposition through tapes and seriously, and realistic. Sometimes I do believe that. You can't forget how close New South Wales went to winning that first game. Brad Fittler could have easily won that first game if it doesn't. If Tommy Turbo, the 2 times he leaves the field, absolutely kill New South Wales.
Yeah.
If he stays on the field for the 80 minutes for both those games, I've got no doubt Brad Fittler wins the series. So, I think sometimes we might just overcook it, push the pass a little bit. Factoring on, do you reckon Wayne Bennett needs 12 months to coach an Origin side?
No.
Or Jack Gibson?
No. That year that he and Mal stepped in, that was pretty late in the piece, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That was, I think 6 months would be plenty. I'll tell you what, it's a nice fill-up. I imagine it'd be good coin for New South Wales. I mean, they offered Brad Fittler, what was it, $450 for 5 months, and that was reportedly almost half of what he was on prior to that. I imagine the head gig for the
watch out.
stop myself. The head gig for the Kiwis would be similarly well paid. Decent fill up. Will he stay at the Raiders? You think he'll stay?
It's my understanding.
I wouldn't.
Club, state, and country.
That'd be insane.
It's my understanding that the board of Canberra were very uncomfortable with Ricky being connected to the Blues. That's my understanding. So therefore, if that's the precedent, how do you then allow Madge to do it? So my gut feel is this. Madge ends up all in with the Blues. And as you say, at the conclusion of Game 3, what's your role until December? Really, it's no role.
Nothing.
So therefore, what prevents you from remaining as the New Zealand coach? Particularly if you've just won the series, which is viable.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you want him as as a New Zealand coach.
Yeah. He's now become like a professional rep coach.
Yeah.
Like, hell, I'd take Billy Slater as the Australian coach every day of the week.
Yep.
He's a gun.
That's right.
He does the job in a small camp, comes in, formulates a game plan, good with selections. That's what you need for a country coach.
And they're different sports as well as far as vocations, because Mal Meninga's a great example. Mal Meninga maybe wasn't suited to the rigours of Clubland and also to the average players at Clubland, whereas you get Mal, who did everything as a player. He's an immortal, and he's holding court with the best of the best at Origin and then on towards Australia. That is completely different to coaching, say, Canberra Raiders week in, week out.
Yeah.
Tigers. It's a completely different vocation. Yeah. So maybe Madge, with his intensity and style, maybe he is more suited to that. Yeah. Hope that music's firing you up, because I don't think our next guest needs the firing up. I think it's happened quite naturally this afternoon. Don't forget the caller of the day. The hole-in-one caller of the day will enter the draw to win a weekly Golf Box prize pack. Australia's greatest golf sale is on now at golfbox.com. Shop at golfbox.com.au today and save big. Big news today. Now, the headline news today is reports Eddie Jones stepping down from the Wallabies job to take on the New Zealand job, is what we understand. No, only joking, Kempy. Only joking. Calm down. But what is fact, Michael Maguire has verbally agreed to the New South Wales Blues Origin role. Tony Kempy, who's about to join us, Tony_Kempy, if you want to catch up with him. Champion bloke. I love his commentary. And he says this: if this is true, it's another shot across the bow of the New Zealand Rugby League. I've been saying for years that we have become a breeding ground for Australian pathways. Kiwis bleed black, not blue. Hashtag Kiwi for life. Hashtag Kiwi coaches only. Hashtag he's on the line. Hello, Tony Kemp.
Hey, Sugar. Yeah. Oh, mate, I'll tell you what, we might as well get Eddie Jones. The NZRL are that much of a basket case at the moment. I wouldn't be surprised if they've thrown their hat in Eddie Jones's ring, along with Japan and every other team around the world that wants Eddie Jones on board. But it did get my blood boiling this morning. And don't get me wrong, this has nothing to do with Madge Maguire. For years, I've been an advocate and have seen this brewing, this type of battle brewing, this losing battle brewing in and around the Pacific players that predominantly come out of New Zealand and filter through to Australian pathways. And now that it's happened in our coaching ranks, I don't know if we don't arrest this with our next appointment, which should be Stacey Jones. Then I think, if we go for another Australian coach, we might as well just become another part of the Australian Rugby League. So you've got Queensland, New South Wales, and the Australian New Zealand Rugby League.
Kempy, we love having you on, and I'm going to challenge you on this because I want to hear your side of the story, but the stats and facts will say, okay, well, Madge Maguire got New Zealand to number one in the world. Your current Warriors coach at the moment, Andrew Webster, got you absolutely flying. So what are your major concerns about having Australians coaching the New Zealand teams? By the way, we'll take Dave Rennie back if he's available.
Yeah, look, that's right. But no, Madge didn't get us to number one. Stephen Kearney got us to number one. So I'll just correct you on that.
No, fair enough.
In 2008, Stephen Kearney got us the World Cup. All right, and yes, he had Wayne Bennett as an assistant to that World Cup. But it was surrounded by a head that was a Kiwi at the top.
Yep.
And right up until David Kidwell took over, Stephen Kearney was in charge, and he took us, along with a very, very good run organisation, to number one in the world. That took a lot of work. So that took regaining Kiwi hearts in Australia, running camps, getting the likes of Kieran Foran and Kevin Proctor, the Bromwich brothers, to all decide to play for New Zealand, along with Jez Smith. And I can continue to go on about those players to finally make the decision that black was the right way to go. And then all of a sudden, through a Anderson report that was down here and done in New Zealand, to say that you guys don't know what you're doing at head office. They brought people over from rugby union. They brought in an Australian coach. The job was already done. Sean Johnson was in that side in 2010 that took us to number one. Benji Marshall was in there, Jeremy Smith, Adam Blair, all those players. So you can't give that title to Madge.
No, fair enough. Fair enough.
He didn't do that.
Yep.
But what's happened is that we have become a breeding ground for Australian NRL clubs, and now what it looks like for the NZRL to promote Australians into jobs within Australian structures. And for me, being an ex-Kiwi, I'm actually hurting because the black jersey, and I'll tell you why, fellas, because back in 2010 when Jason Tomolola decided to play for the Kiwis, Mal Meninga had signed him for Queensland. Yeah?
Yep.
And I flew over and talked to Jason and his family up in North Queensland and got him to decide to play for New Zealand because he was a South Auckland kid, went over there, made it at the Cowboys. We knew we could see the writing on the wall, as Mal could do, and we got in the fight. And it was the first time that we got in the fight. And we started to fight for players, left and right. That was Mal Meninga and the New Zealand Rugby League. Well, guess what? Now there's 4 other Pacific Islanders in the fight. They're winning hands down. Tonga, Samoa, the Cook Islanders, Fiji, they're winning hands down now, taking players back to their jersey. Australia and New Zealand, being the 2 Tier 1 teams, are losing this battle. And for me, what it looks like when Madge goes back to coach the Blues is it's another win for the Australians. And New Zealand Rugby League, this is why it's a shot across their bow. They need to grow some kahunas here, and they need to say, we'll promote our own. And I'll tell you what it could look like. Stacey Jones could coach the Kiwi team, and he could surround it with players, with ex-players and coaches such as Nathan Kalis, Tommy Luluwai, young Slade Griffin. We could start to create a pathway to bring our own people through. But the main thing about the Sugar is that they know what it takes to be a person inside that black jersey. And when you get someone that goes, well, it was a pathway into New South Wales, that doesn't sit well with me.
My best mate is the assistant to Madge, so I know firsthand how much these blokes are putting in, but I don't know firsthand, Kempy, what you're sharing. So I totally take on your, and I have to because you live it. You live that Kiwi way, so I have to take that on board. What do you do? Like so from, of course, he's got the reins, and I think they're going to do a good job to the point where I think they're a massive chance of winning these Pacific Championships, both with the coaching and the players they have at their disposal. But what do you think ahead of next year? Do you totally believe that it's untenable that Maguire could take on the Blues and the Kiwis next year? Kempy, I know you've got to lean towards Stacey Jones, but do you believe that Madge can make both happen, or you don't believe that can happen?
Well, this is the conundrum that the international game's in. So I'll ask you the question. When you play for Queensland or New South Wales, who do you have to play for?
To then go on to Australia? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Well, you're meant to then go on and play and represent Australia, aren't you?
Yes.
So, that pathway through Origin is to represent Australia. So what you're saying, but if you're a coach, you can go and coach New Zealand. Well, why don't we so here's the argument. Then why don't we open the door up for Kiwis to play in Origin?
Well, to be honest with you, I'm not totally opposed to that either, if I'm being brutally honest. But I get what you're saying.
Yeah. So, but then you look at what I'm trying to protect, and I'm trying to protect the legacy that was built. I would like to hear what Mark Graham, like the Proctors, the old boys that have played and represent this jersey, where they see players now saying, oh, I'm just going to take a rest, and a coach going, well, actually, New Zealand's a great job, but now I'm going to go and coach New South Wales. I think, for me, we actually don't promote our own in this country, and we've always relied on the Australian model. And forgive me, fellas, I don't believe in that. I actually think we can stand our own 2 feet, and I've always advocated that. I was at a meeting here in New Zealand when a ex-Parramatta coach stood up here when he was working for the Warriors and said, well, I'm sorry, boys, but I'm just telling you now, there's no one in New Zealand that can do my job. And I looked at him and wanted to throw him off the balcony. You know what I mean? Like, to treat us as if we were sitting out there not knowing what we're doing, I think is why I feel so passionate about this. I actually think we can set up our own structures. We're totally different to the way that you guys run Origin. We're totally different players to how you guys play your game. And I think the reason why we compete so well against Australia is because we hold our own and do it our way. And it's called the Kiwi Way, which we introduced back in 2010. Now, if they come out and say, well, he can coach New South Wales, and by the way, you can come back here and coach the Kiwis when you want, it's just taking another position out of a legacy that was being built since 1907. And for me, that doesn't sit well. I don't want Madge to coach the Kiwis. I've got nothing against them. Go well, son, go well and coach New South Wales and hopefully get the Australian job. But that's your pathway. New South Wales, Queensland, coach Aussie. Leave us alone and give us our Kiwi status and let our Kiwis coach our own team.
What do you think the time commitment is for an international coach, Tony? So Joel and I were speaking earlier. We think for someone like Maguire for the New South Wales job, it's probably a 5 to 6 month proposition. I mean, Mal Meninga only has the Australian coaching role. He doesn't have any other coaching jobs. Would you want someone standalone head coach for New Zealand?
So that model was actually taken to Brendan Hill, who was the Canterbury CEO when he was working for the Australian Rugby League, the New South Wales, the NRL, back in 2010. And we propositioned to him that we wanted Stephen Kearney to be our full-time coach. And because we had no money, we wanted some help from the NRL to help pay for that and take him out of Parramatta and make him full-time coach here in New Zealand. We actually had a plan to build the game here in New Zealand because we need someone on the ground here to coach our coaches, because the problem with New Zealand is that our kids, why they're going to Australia, is because they're not being coached properly. So we needed someone to bring that standard of coaching up. Well, what they did was they took that and they gave Mal Meninga a full-time job. They actually took our model. And if you look at the Australian model, Mal's got all those younger coaches underneath him that are being progressed into further opportunities through either the NRL or up that Australian, New South Wales, Queensland ladder. So I'm not really worried about time commitment. I think what they need to do first and foremost is they actually have to own their own people. And they have to stop thinking that we need to go to Australia to get the best coaches. And if you're talking time commitment around a Kiwi campaign, you guys tell me pre-COVID how many test matches there are during COVID, post-COVID, which is next to none. Yet we've got an Australian coach who's now post-COVID decided to go to New South Wales. We've probably been paying him in a game in New Zealand that gets no money. Less than 6% of the annual income goes into grassroots here in New Zealand. And now we want to say to him, well, you keep that and keep that extra money as well. We'll keep filling your pockets. And our Kiwi coaches over here that want to crack won't get a go except sitting under you until the next time you go. Don't forget, the coach who was assistant coach is now coaching Samoa.
Okay, yeah, okay.
So, this is about, I'm talking purely about the black jersey. That's why I said, Kiwis bleed black. They don't bleed blue, they bleed black. So, my hope is that we have someone like a Stacey Jones who's on a trajectory in the NRL as a coach who can come in. And mate, we've always had those type of coaches, boys. If you have a look at them, Graham Lowe, coached the Kiwis here from New Zealand before he went to Origin, before he went to Manly. So did Bluey McLennan before he went on to Leeds, before he went on to the Warriors. They don't start in the NRL and then work their way, back into that position. They actually start because they know the jersey. And that's what's missing for me here in New Zealand.
Kempy, I'm so glad we could get you on and this is the reason we wanted to do this, because people come from different lenses, different cultural backgrounds, different beliefs, different values and all those sorts of things. And clearly it means a lot to you and many others, I assume, to have a New Zealand born coach to do that. But for me, I sort of think, okay, well, Andy Farrell's coaching Ireland and they may win the World Cup in the rugby. Tony Gustafsson, we rode on his wave as far as the Matildas were concerned. So my kind of side of things is like, okay, well, let's just get the best person for the job. If Madge wins the Pacific Championships, there's a big case he is the best person for the job. But I totally get where you're coming from, and it's not an easy one. And I just wonder what's being said in the walls of the New Zealand Rugby League boardroom. Do they... does it matter to him that he's coaching New South Wales?
Well, I'll tell you. And, tongue in cheek, what we said inside the walls of the New Zealand Rugby League is, well, at least we'll get some tickets to Origin.
Yeah.
And this is beyond that, Sugar. This is about the game in this country, which is dying. I've tried to advocate for the NRL to come and take this over, because we should be a third state. We should be, when you look at Origin pulling $14-15 million through New South Wales and Queensland, New Zealand Rugby League are getting nothing, and yet we've got more than 50% of the stakeholders now playing through the NRL in all grades. We lose 500 to 1,000 kids every year to Australia that fill that competition and make it the great competition that it is. And I don't disagree with that, all right? But what I do disagree with is that now we have purely become a country that plays tournaments where 16 NRL clubs come in and take all the kids, and there is nothing left here on the ground. And if we start to do that with our coaching ranks, when you're wearing the black jersey, well, it dilutes what they call mana in that jersey, which is the integrity of that jersey. And for me, I think the International Federation is a basket case. When you've got players such as Frizzell that can play for Wales, he can then go and represent Australia, and now he can show up for Tonga. You've got coaches that are coaching New Zealand that are now coaching Samoa, going to coach New South Wales. I just think they need to sort themselves out. But it's best to sort your own backyard out first. We actually have people here that can coach our team. Now, if we didn't have coaches, I would agree with you. Let's go and look at the best coaches. But I can tell you now, and being in that structure, and we didn't, I never had an NRL coach me in the Kiwi team, but I had fantastic coaches that got us up when we could beat Australia.
Tell you what, Kempy.
And I think what you're doing is you're taking a NRL view of this. You can't take that NRL view when it comes to the black jersey.
Kempy, my best guess will be that whether Madge coaches New Zealand next year or not, the pressures of this job for New South Wales, I think it's going to wholly and solely come down to the results of this Pacific Championships. If he wins the Pacific Championships,
he stays.
6 to go, play on. And if he goes out and wins the Origin, I think most people will be wrapped. But if he loses it, I think there's a great excuse to go, nah, we want to look in a different direction. Do you kind of feel the same thing, Kempy?
No, I think. Well, if I was sitting in the CEO seat at New South Wales, I would have told him, "You're leaving New Zealand. You're coming over here and concentrating on this full time because we need to beat Queensland. It's worth too much to us."
Yeah, okay.
And so right. So that convo should have happened. You've got to put us in. You've got to put us in the picture. We're a thorn in New South Wales' foot. They need to pull that out. And the only way they do that is to get Madge to commit full time. And I'm pretty sure that the part of the criteria for him signing was that he has to show up 100% of the time. He can't then just leave it while you're building your pathways through your junior sides and your junior structures and your camps and all that to say, oh, hang on, boys, I'm just going to go on a 3-month tour with the Kiwi team to the World Cup. I'll pick this up in February. I just, for the life of me, from an administration side of things, can't see that happening. But as I said, the game at that level, I know in this country it's far from desirable. I think you guys are way smarter than we are over here, and that's why I'm saying that we should be probably run by the NRL as opposed to just having our own national body just continually make these errors.
Interesting. Just onto the Pacific Championships itself, do you see a halo effect from the Up the Wars movement for this New Zealand side?
Well, there's only one player that made the New Zealand side, and that's pretty surprising given the fact that they had that run. The thing with the national side since the Warriors have come in, when the Warriors have gone well, if you look back on that great Warriors side back through the early 2000s, there was 10 to 12 players that made the Kiwi team when they just went out in that 100th Test match and destroyed Australia over here in the North Harbour Stadium. I think, for the Warriors to actually get that halo effect, you need a majority of their players making the New Zealand team. What that says when they've only picked one player is that we haven't got enough development yet in New Zealand. But, given that Cameron George is building those pathways, maybe 5 years' time when we get them back, we may see a bigger number come back into that New Zealand side. So, it's a really, for me, we're standing in quicksand at the moment, and we're we're trying to fight our way up through the Pacific battle, which they're winning hands down. Tonga's a sea of red in New Zealand. Like, if you come and watch a game down here, it's going to be a sea of red, a sea of blue, and you're going to see a sprinkling of black. And for me in New Zealand, that's a battle that we lost when we should have been in it back in 2013.
So one Warriors player in the squad, is there one or more who you felt from Andrew Webster's side who were terribly unlucky?
Well, I'm not talking, my conversation is about how many of those guys in that team could have played for New Zealand.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So,
as opposed to the other Pacific nations, you mean?
That's right.
Yep.
So when you get in a fight, the Pacific nations jumped in the fight and we jumped out of it.
Mm.
So now when you see, the likes of Tuolagi, when you've got Tomalolo and Adam Whanua-Blake choosing Tonga over New Zealand, you get those boys that the likes that of Benji Marshall that was standing in an Australian schoolboy jersey looking at the haka saying, I'm in the wrong team. That battle was becoming so hard to beat. So that's what I mean about pathways here in New Zealand. And of course, you're on that side of the Tasman. You don't see that.
No.
So we've got kids now that are more aligned to state of origin than they are to the Kiwi jersey. Now, the way that the Australians rewrite the rules when it suits them around, as long as you're here by your 13, you can play state of origin, throws them straight into an Australian jersey. That they're actually in the fight. They're making that origin sustainable. We actually just sit back and say, yeah, come and do it. Whereas I would say, well, no. Just because they're 13, they're still a Kiwi. They should be playing for New Zealand. But that's where our international game is at the moment. They're so far behind the 8 ball. And I'm taking nothing away from the Pacific nations. I think, everyone should get an opportunity to play for their homelands. That's why state of origin should be called country of origin. Because now if you look at the state of origin, I said this back in 2010 to Beta up in Brisbane. I feel sorry for the Brisbane kids that grew up watching Wally Lewis, now having their jerseys taken off them by guys that have moved there when they were 12.
Okay, yeah, that's a fair point as well. Very fair point. Just onto the team, I've just got a feeling, and I mentioned this earlier in the chat, Nelson Asofa Solomona, Fisher Harris, Leota, Tarpany, you got some wonderful players. Jerome Hughes, who I felt prior to the injury, he's probably fully fit again now. He was probably the Melbourne Storm's best player. I think they're a red-hot chance here, Kempy. What do you think?
Oh, of course. I think New Zealand. I still think Australians are favourites, and I think they'll win quite comfortably on the weekend against Samoa. And I think New Zealand, with the team that we've got, we've got good go forward. We've got Jerome Hughes behind the scrum. I think we're struggling in the 9 Jews. I don't know whether Levi can do the job there in the cover, but you've got Joseph Manu and Nickel Clogstead out the back, whoever they choose to go with. I think there's strike power across the park. But I'll just go back to the Kiwi jersey. It's just not about going out there and playing a game for a guy that pulls on a black jersey these days, Sugar. It's about creating an aspiration for a young guy that watches telly and says, that's Joseph Manu wearing a black jersey, and I want to pull that jumper on. And I think what we're missing here is that, yes, we can compete. So, and we have done, because at the moment, with the amount of Kiwi players that we have, we've got players that can actually compete on the front foot at the moment in a tier 1. And let's not talk about tiers, because they're Jurassic. They should be gone. But if you prophesise 5 years from now and you go through that team, the Leotas, who are they going to play for?
No, that's
the Solomonas, who are they going to play for?
Yep.
Because they're losing the battle. They're not going to choose the black jersey. And this is the conversation that I'm having at the moment. I'm not worried about the results. I'm worried about the preservation of a legacy that was started in 1907. And at the moment, I think if they continue down the same road, we're actually going to become a tier 2 team.
Well, Kempy, we've got to run, mate. We've had a very, very strong, healthy debate, which I absolutely love, and particularly hearing your side of the fence. As I said, I very much endear your commentary. Love hearing all of that. And like with my wife, we don't always have to agree, but I love her, and I love you, Kempy. Mate, great to have you here on the Run Home with Joel and Fletch.
I love you too, mate. We'll talk again soon, anytime.